This is what I see when most people just see a scrap of fabric. Most of these started out as something completely different. A piece of clothing, an old linen, a curtain, something I found at an estate sale because the fabric was just too good to leave behind. And somehow all of these completely unrelated scraps eventually end up together like this. What looks like a pile of scraps in the beginning eventually becomes a collection with its own personality. And what I especially love about doing this is I'm able to use the things that most people overlook as completely useless. Hey, welcome back to my channel. So today I am a little overwhelmed, but also really excited because I have so much vintage and rescued textiles that I'm sorting through and putting together slow stitch bundles and something new, which I'm calling artist fragment packs with specifically mixed media artists and junk journalers who, let's be real, if you make junk journals, you're an artist because you're making something from nothing, and that takes a lot of creativity. But either way, if you don't think of yourself as an artist, these are kind of like mixed media textile packs. I'm going to go ahead and start cutting all the different fabrics into smaller pieces, and a lot of the fabrics I use are coming off of things like, this was a cardigan, like a duster cardigan that I DIY'd and then I ended up not wearing because it didn't quite fit me right, but I absolutely love this knit, so we can incorporate that. This is a wool scarf and it's a really, really nice fabric, and it's already in these squares, which are really nice because I'm doing kind of like a darker colored bundle and that would go really well. But then this pink could go in a lighter, actually this I think could go in the darker one too. Maybe this pink could go in the lighter one. So anyway, it takes a while. Like here's another example. It takes a while because this was a tablecloth and I'm sectioning it in like the ones that I want to use, and then I did the pinks and the purples in a different one. And so I work in color stories. If you know me, you're probably familiar with this by now, but I kind of work in themes and coordinating colors, and I really enjoy putting together like supplies for other people to use using a lot of vintage materials that would otherwise go to the landfill. And I'm so passionate about saving and repurposing these vintage textiles. Now, sometimes, like in the case of this may be newer, but it's really nice quality and it's a secondhand textile that I rescued, so I don't think twice about adding things like that in. But of course, the majority seems to be vintage because that's just what I'm most drawn to. So with something like this, I have to cut it apart anyway because I have to cut away from all the seams. Like obviously, I wouldn't want somebody to have this armhole in this seam in their project, so I just cut out the flat pieces. And I'll show you what's left when I'm done cutting this. It's very little goes to waste, so I've already used some, but it gives me a lot of these rectangular pieces, so I can get rid of the parts that I don't need and not feel bad about it, because there is plenty here that I can use. Of that whole cardigan, this is what's left, about like a hand-sized ball, and it's the seam binding and the sections that have the seams that I don't want to deal with that. It's too close to the seam. There's really nothing there for me to work with. On my slow stitch bundles, I include trim a lot, and the trim really could be synthetic and it's not a big deal. But when it comes to the fabric, I have to like how the fabric feels and how it looks. So more often than not, my slow stitch bundles are made up mostly of cotton, but with linen, wool, even silk and other materials that just have a really nice feel to them. Of course, if it's polyester and it feels good or looks really good, of course I include that too, but I do gravitate towards a lot of natural materials because I like how they feel when I'm working with them. They're naturally softened with age. It's not uncommon that I hear from well-meaning loved ones that I'm wasting my time or this is crazy. What are your thoughts? Do you think these textiles deserve a second life? Do you think this is worth doing? Taking them, cutting out what's salvageable and using it again? Or do you think this is also a waste of time? Let me know in the comments. To me, it's a good use of my time because I really enjoy and have always been so passionate about vintage and secondhand materials and reusing what's already out there. And the other element to that is like when I go to the craft store, anybody else can purchase those materials. But when I go to an estate sale or a thrift store and I pull something out, it's yes, somebody else might have it, but the chance that somebody else has this specific item from 1992 or 17 or not 17 1972 1975, the chance is a lot smaller. And then when you compile them into these curated blends, it just makes for a really unique crafting and creating experience. So I'm really drawn to that. That's how I create my own junk journals. And now I'm getting into slow stitching, and it's how I've been doing my slow stitching so far as well. All right, my little friend here wants me to get this clutter out of her way. So I was really drawn to this pattern and the texture. This is more like, this is a sample, but it's an old vintage upholstery fabric. And I love to mix weights when I'm doing these bundles and fragment packs. I like to have a variety of weights and types of fabric because that creates added interest for layering. And this one I selected for the color, which is very fall winter, but it has this sort of subtle sheen to the fabric too. And I'm always looking for interesting details like that that can kind of elevate the collection. This was a pillowcase, and I love the brand Lady Pepperell. I find a lot of her friends, and I really like them. She does a lot of vintage florals, and for a vintage pillowcase, you can get a surprisingly decent amount of fabric out of. This is an Afghan, and I selected it because I absolutely love the color scheme. I love the zigzag. It's very 60s, 70s, but also it has holes, so I don't even need to think twice or feel bad about cutting it up. We can reuse it because nobody else is going to be able to, or very few people would likely want to use it with holes in it. I love when I can find nice hand embroidered pieces. Those usually become the focal element. Like this collection is a flower child 70s bohemian theme, and I love the colors. This was from a vintage top my mom used to wear in like the 80s or the 90s to work, but I was obsessed with this color first of all and the nice like leafy texture, but for the longest time I had no idea what I wanted to do with it. And that's a common theme. A lot of these are coming off of like my own personal stash. I'm just realizing they're the perfect candidates to complete some of these bundles and to add interest and focal points. And I'm also going out to estate sales and finding more, but a lot of these are coming from my own little collection. I love adding embroidered details, lace, crochet, a little semi-sheer fabric will add a nice interest. Often vintage scarves have really interesting prints, and I love adding granny squares in too whenever I can find them. Sometimes I harvest things off of hair accessories or pieces of clothing, and then I use those as embellishments. So here I'm cutting into a quilted piece. This was originally a pillowcase set, and I love to use quilted pieces whenever possible and putting them together. Like here's a here's a bunch of quilted pieces I put together based on color, and I just think they really work well together. Of course, I include a few neutrals, and these pre-quilted panels can really be nice for things like creating a sewing hooswif or a needle book, or a journal cover where you want that like soft, cushy exterior. At the estate sales is where I can find a lot of these naturally discolored laces, vintage linens, doilies, and then not hand crocheted, well, hand crocheted pieces, but also hand embroidered pieces. And those add a lot of texture, but they also add a lot of visual interest to the bundles. So, and of course, I love to go out to estate sales. So this gives me kind of like something to do every month that I really enjoy. So I love this particular butterfly one. So now let me show you how these actually all come together to form a collection, with each one having their own distinct personality. First, we'll go through 2 fragment packs, and then we'll go through 2 slow stitch bundles, which are curated fabric bundles. Okay, so I'll walk you through a fragment pack and the types of, like, this is just one example of a fragment pack, and it's in an English manor theme. So we have our semi-sheer ruffled white fabric, a nice floral cotton, some stripes, a nice textured piece, again, upholstery sample. I have a few of those in this collection, and I just love the texture, and some of them have this nice like sheen to them that I'm really drawn to. I don't know what this is called with the raised stitching becoming the pattern, but I love that. I only had this tiny piece, so it fits perfectly in a fragment pack. Fragment packs are, like you see, they're like mice, like the size of a hand or slightly bigger. They're small cuts that are meant to be like embellishments in junk journals, pockets, tabs, mixed media collage, so small slow stitching projects, all of that these would be ideal for. But anything where you want a nice variety of weights and textures, these are very texture focused. And so it's not your typical like scrap lot where everything is quilting cotton weight. These have shears, heaviers, mid-weight, but I really like putting them together. I really like the variety. So instead of talking you through the second fragment pack, I'll just show you a few highlights so you can see the difference in personality between the two, just in the colors and the patterns and the textures. They're all completely unique, which is like my favorite part about making them. And then when you look at them together, the colors just kind of mesh without being overly matchy. And that, again, is one of my favorite things about them. So that's fragment pack number 2. Let's move on to the slow stitch bundles. Okay, I've completed a slow stitch bundle in this sort of darker, kind of moodier color palette, which one of my customers really liked, so I thought it would be nice to do a few more in this color palette. So here's that wool, and then here's crochet or the knit or the crochet, I'm not sure, but I love that. I'm including trim in all of my slow stitch bundles. So this one's kind of like this wine burgundy color, and then I've got my flocked black velvet, or no, not velvet, black flocked scalloped, and then you can add ribbon in the little holes. See, I thought this one went better with this color palette. I love this trim. I'm almost out of it, but I've been using it like crazy. This is called a caterpillar pleated satin. This is my fabric. I had extra, and the back side is more of this sort of top color, but I love the shimmer on that. Speaking of shimmer, this is really interesting. Let me see if the light's catching it. Yeah, it's like this silver and deep turquoise color. And then here's the here's the like under layer to go with that. And then there's another one. And this one has this sort of detail. And then the bottom is really pretty with that scalloped detail. Love that. That's the focal point. So every slow stitch bundle has a focal point. This is just to add a lot of texture, but technically you could use this as a dish rag. It was never used. It's hand knit, but I like the colors for this bundle. I try to include embroidered pieces when I find them. See how it's semi-sheer? I like to include a nice variety of weights. This is a cotton, and then we have some velvet. Excuse any lint, I won't have time to remove lint. These are clean, but some of them are just like lint magnets, like velvet for instance, but you can't beat the texture. I like this one. It reminds me of tree bark. I don't know if it's really reading on camera, but these have, these are from upholstery fabric. So they've got just this incredible texture to them. Then of course I have more cotton and then more semi-sheer, sheer fabric. We've got a gold satin. This is fun. Okay. Snakeskin, sheer layer. And some of them do have, like this has the original hem still. And I don't worry about that because I feel like they can decide how they want to keep or not keep that. Like in this one, for instance, the hem kind of adds something. It adds kind of this sort of wavy detail at the end. So I didn't want to take that off. Sometimes I do cut the hems off though. But, and here's an example. I used to cut these off, but now I'm going to leave them on there because I know they serve a purpose, and sometimes, and I didn't think about this before, but sometimes people use these to match the colors for the project. So like say somebody wanted to use this in a bigger project and they wanted to build out the colors to go with it, they could take this to the store with them and pick the complementary colors they wanted or get it close to. And so yeah, I leave that on now. I love this print. This is a nice cotton. And then we have a few trims to round it out. We've got this green velvet with that nice detail on the edge. The velvet stripe down the middle, but kind of that nice sheen on the edges. And then here's this, I just like this color. Velvet, and then another one I've had for a while, but I absolutely love. This is a jacquard. I don't think I can say that word. And then a black lace. And so that would complete one slow stitch bundle. And so I obviously have so much more work to do, and these are time consuming, but I really enjoy putting these together. So if you're interested, of course, I would love to have you visit my shop, but in the meantime, I will be making more of these and hopefully sorting through so much more of my supplies and using up what I have in my own projects, as because when I sort through, I get excited about stuff. Like, I always have too much. So I can keep something, I can keep this fabric, and I can also sell some of this fabric. So it's kind of like a win-win. Now I thought I would show you one of my Slow Stitch signature bundles that is in this English manor theme. And I kind of thought it would be fun to explain how I build these. I have a little bit of a formula going, so my petite bundles are significantly smaller. That's how they have the name petite than my signature slow stitch bundles. So the petite bundle is made for somebody that needs less material or just doesn't want to maybe commit to having as much. And the signature slow stitch bundles, I give my larger cuts and my more like special focal pieces. So this is the focal piece for this one, and it's in this really nice naturally worn in, I think it's a linen cotton blend, but it could just be cotton. That I don't know for sure, but I love working with natural fibers as much as possible. Of course, I do bring in synthetics, and here's an example. This is another focal piece. It has the polyester backing, and the top is cotton or a cotton blend. And these are both the focal pieces, which I build everything else around. So I couldn't resist including this. This was machine quilted, of course, but I just love that like swirl effect. And then this one on the back, the original use was something involving these little tiny silicone dots. So I don't know if it was a mat, but it looked like it had never been used, and I love how that goes with everything else. I love the texture of this one, and the top of it feels like, I think, a cotton blend, cotton polyester blend. Okay, you get the idea. I'll just go ahead and show you the rest of the materials that come with this one. I like to include a lot of what I call supporting fabrics. So these are all meant to complement each other and work in the design. So when you purchase a signature slow stitch bundle, it's like you're getting these curated materials in this theme, so you can just start creating right away. You don't have to go gather any materials. I really like this lace fabric. I think this is from the 1960s, but I couldn't say for sure. It was in incredible condition. It could be the 80s, but yes, I I found it among a bunch of other 60s fabrics. This is from a dress that I had, and I was really drawn to this embroidered lace. So this is more of a 90s to modern fabric. And then we've got the engineer stripes. Is that what that's called? It's classic. This is corduroy. It's very soft and nicely textured. Vintage quilting cotton. I like to include many vintage quilting cotton along with lots of different textures and interesting fabrics. So I like that this is metallic, but at the same time, if you don't want the metallic, the back side is pretty much like this more neutral brown color. And I do like to include some solids, but I like them to be a little bit more interesting than just a plain solid fabric, because you can get that anywhere. So like this solid is velvet, and this solid, I'm considering it a solid. It has this kind of subtle pattern on it with a nice sheen. And then this is the other solid, is the blue swirly quilt. And then I hand stamped this. Was originally a shower curtain, and look, I just love that they were using like these sheer stripes on their shower curtain. And then I hand stamped it with some floral, vintage floral stamps. So those are all the fabrics that come with this one. And you can kind of see when you look at them all together, they do coordinate well. And then for this one, I have this, I don't know what you call this, but I had it in my stash and the colors went well. Cording, a chenille cording. And this nice gold tassel trim. It's stuck. Hang on. So we've got the gold tassel trim, and then one of my favorite trims is this velvet scroll in green. And this one comes with some vintage lace and some more. And this opens up down here, and then this becomes a tassel slash fringe trim. And then each one gets some embellishments, and these have the look of metal, but these are actually, I believe they're plastic, but they are, I don't know. Let's see if I can set them down there. So see how they have that nice look of metal, but they are actually plastic, and they are vintage. I love those. And then I cut this off of a bigger crochet piece. Just the blue and cream went well with this collection. So that is a good representation of one of my signature slow stitch collections. And I consider it a slow stitch collection, and my tag slow stitch collection, but you can use it for more than that. And I title them, I'm going to start titling them curated fabric bundle, I think, something along those lines, so that way people that don't slow stitch aren't turned off by the title, because they are very versatile. But my like product name for these is slow stitch bundle, so hopefully that's not too confusing. Are you already working on fall and Christmas crafts? I would be curious how early others get started. I guess I start earlier because I want to have it available for people to be able to create with. So the sooner I can get it posted, ideally, if I can get all of my Christmas stuff posted by September at the latest, that's ideal. And then fall and winter I'm working on now. So yes, it seems early, but it makes sense when you think about how the whole process works. When you think about other people needing to have the materials far ahead of the holiday, so they have time to create with them. But anyway, if you're a fellow fabric lover, vintage lover, slow stitcher, junk journaler, or just someone who can't walk past a beautiful old textile, I'd love to have you stick around. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Peace.